Hi, good afternoon everybody. Thanks for joining me today for this session that's brought to you by the Grow Together project. My name is Claire Bannerman and I'm the Roving Chef for Scotland for Vegetarian for Life. So Vegetarian for Life are a national charity. We support older vegetarians and vegans, but during lockdown we've enjoyed doing these virtual sessions for the wider community. So today I'm going to do an orzo stew that can also be served as a soup. So if you're not familiar with orzo, it's like tiny pasta that almost looks like rice. It's traditionally used in Greek and Italian cooking. And then we're going to make some simple no-bake peanut butter and chocolate flapjacks. So we'll start off with our orzo stew. So I'm going to use a red onion, and so you guys that have joined me before will know that I've been cooking lots with my nieces during lockdown. Unfortunately, my sister and my brother-in-law both had COVID, so I've been doing a lot of babysitting. The kids absolutely love cooking, but they keep saying to me, Auntie Claire, we hate chopping all these onions, making us cry. And that's because they chop off the root, and that's where the chemical lives that brings the tears. Or as my niece calls it, the wee hairy bit. So I'm going to leave that wee hairy bit on. So I'll start off by chopping off the top of my onion. And then using a technique which is called the bridge, where I use my forefinger and thumb, I secure the onion, and then I chop right through the middle. I can then just nick the skin, and that makes it easy just to peel that skin back. So then using the bridge technique again, I'm just going to slice up that onion, and then I'll tuck my knuckles back, and then I can dice it, and that means if my knife slides, I'm not going to cut myself. And then the area in the root where all the chemicals live, that goes in the bin, so hopefully no tears. So as I've mentioned previously, my mum's got bad arthritis, so she finds it really quite hard to peel and chop onions. So she uses frozen onions for most of her savoury dishes, so that's absolutely fine to use frozen onions. You'll get them in most freezer sections. So again, I'll just roughly chop down that onion. You can have your onion as chunky or as fine as you like. So I'm just going to preheat a large pan, and today I'm using olive oil. If you don't have olive oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil would be absolutely fine. And I had a person on my demo yesterday who's on a diet and asked if fry light would be fine for her recipes. That's absolutely fine to use your lighter oil sprays too. So a little splash of olive oil. And then we can go ahead and add our onion. We'll get that frying off. So if you're doing this at home, take your time to soften off your onions and really develop flavour, but I'll be doing it a little bit quicker today just for demo purposes. So I'm going to use a carrot, so I like to use my little speed peeler. You can peel directly in the palm of your hand, or if you prefer, particularly if you've got arthritis like my mum, or if you're cooking with younger family members, you can just place your carrot on your board and you can just peel and turn. This is a really good way for getting younger family members involved in the kitchen, and that makes really light work of peeling that carrot. Then we'll just top and tail. So if you've never heard the phrase top and tail, just chopping off the top and bottom of your carrot, and then we'll just roughly chop that down. So this stew is great for using up leftover veg, and you can substitute any of the veg for other vegetables. This would work well with things like mixed pepper, that would be nice too. So just roughly chopping that carrot down. So I like to use carrot in a lot of my cooking, so you've maybe heard your granny say to you that carrots help you see in the dark, so there's a little bit of truth to that. Carrots contain vitamin A, which is really good for eye health, so we'll go ahead and pop in our carrot. And we'll get that sweating off. So really by sweating off your vegetables, you're developing nice flavours here. So I'll turn that heat down a little bit now, just let them sweat off on medium. So this lovely stew is packed full of garlic, so what I'm using today is a large garlic, so it's not the actual bulb that's large, it's the individual cloves that are large, and most larger supermarkets supply these now. So the easiest way to get into it is just to lean on it, and that way you'll crack open the bulb, and then you can take out your 4 cloves. So quite a lot of garlic in this, as I say, it's 4 cloves that we're using today. So this one's really quite difficult to get into it. So I'm just going to cut that down, just not letting me in at all. So I say my mum finds it really difficult to peel and chop garlic, so she uses a lazy garlic. It would be absolutely fine to use that. You'll find that in the jars and tubes. So as you can see, they're really nice big fat juicy cloves of garlic. So I'm just going to use the flat of my knife just to lean on the garlic, and that way the skin will just crack and can just pop off. If you ever do get a garlic where the skin won't come off, if you just pop the cloves in a little bit of hot water, that'll loosen off the skin. So this skin's coming off quite easily. So just use the flat of your knife just to crack that open and just take off the end, and then that skin should just slide off. Let's say I work for Vegetarian for Life. We have our own website, which is vegetarianforlife.org.uk, where you'll find access to our recipe section. We've also got lots of information on schemes that we have. We have our pen pal scheme, and we also have a grant scheme, so please feel free to check out the information on our website. So what I'm going to do is, to get this garlic nice and fine, I'm going to grate it, and I'm going to grate it on the fine side of my grater. Of course, if you had a garlic crusher or a garlic press, you could use that. That would be absolutely perfect. So it can be a little bit tricky to finely chop garlic, that's why I like to grate it. This is really packed full of flavour with our garlic, really nice and rich and robust. Oops, sliding away from me today. So I can go ahead and scrape in all that lovely garlic. Get your garlic sweating off. Keep it moving about the pan. Garlic can burn quite easily, so we just want to keep that moving. It smells fantastic. So I'm going to add some beans now, so it's up to yourself what type of beans you can use. You can use kidney beans, mixed beans, cannelloni beans, butter beans, really any type of beans. Today I'm using mixed taco beans, so we'll go ahead and add them. These are just supermarket own brand that I'm using. And then I'm going to add passata. So passata is found next to your canned tomatoes, so if you couldn't get passata, it'd be absolutely fine to use canned tomatoes. So I'm looking for 200 grams, which is normally half a tub, or if you were using canned tomatoes, it would be half a can. So your passata is like your canned tomatoes, but it's been sieved, so it's nice and smooth. So we're looking for about half a carton of that. Get that mixed in. So I can go ahead and add my orzo. So as I said, orzo is like rice. It's really, really tiny pasta. It's absolutely beautiful in soups and stews and casseroles. If you couldn't get orzo, you could use small macaroni, or if you had spaghetti, you could just break up some dry spaghetti and put that in. So I've got 85 grams here. Give that a good stir. And then I'm going to add a teaspoon of paprika. So paprika is not a spicy spice, it's a nice earthy sweet spice, and again I'm just using supermarket own brand. If you did like a little bit of spice, you could add a little bit of chilli, that would work equally well. So I'm adding about a teaspoon of my paprika. If you could get smoked paprika, that would be absolutely lovely for this. So just let that warm through. So I'm going to go ahead and add my stock. I'm just using supermarket own brand vegetable stock, but if you are vegan, check the label, because a lot of supermarket own brand vegetable stock cubes contain milk. So if you are vegan, I would recommend using something like Marigold bouillon for this. So I'm going to make the soup today. I'm using 700 ml of stock. So if you wanted to make it the stew, you would just reduce the quantity of stock by half. I'll go ahead and add that. Give that a stir. So I'm just going to transfer this to my back ring, let that come up to the boil, and I'm just going to cover that over. So we'll go on to our flapjacks now. So for my flapjacks, you can use a square tin or a round tin. I'm just using a round tin today. What I've done is I've greased it with a little bit of coconut oil and then added some greaseproof paper. So when you're doing that, make sure you get it right up to the edges. So we'll start off by melting our dark chocolate. So it's up to yourself if you want to use 50 grams of dark chocolate and just drizzle that across the final flapjack. I like to do a solid covering, so I've got 200 grams of dark chocolate, and that will cover the whole top of my flapjacks. So I'm just break up the pieces of chocolate. So if you've got a microwave safe bowl, you can microwave your chocolate for 30-second bursts, but take care when you do that, because dark chocolate can burn quite easy. So I'm using vegan dark chocolate today, but if you were going for a vegetarian rather than a vegan version, you could use white chocolate or milk chocolate. So what I want to do is get a pan of water on the heat. So this is what we would call a double boiler or a bain-marie. So I'm taking some hot water from the kettle, and then I'm placing my heat-proof bowl over the top. So we'll turn our heat down a touch. So we want to let this melt. When you're doing this, take care, there will be steam coming up. But what you need to do is make sure that the water isn't actually touching the bottom of the bowl, because that would cause your chocolate to seize. So as I say, I work for Vegetarian for Life, and we have lots of free resources available. We have Cooking for One, which is a nice publication which contains lovely recipes for vegetarians and vegans. Lots of hints and tips in there. We also have our vegan rescue pack, so perhaps you're new to vegan cooking, or maybe you've done the Veganuary challenge where you become vegan for a month and you're looking for more recipe inspiration. We've got lots of hints and tips in here, and quite often people say to me, when I try to become vegan, Claire, I end up eating the same thing all the time. So this has got loads of nice recipes in it, but it's also got a menu planner to make sure you're getting a nice healthy balanced diet with all the nutrition that you need. It also gives you a comprehensive guide of what a vegan will eat, but more importantly what they won't eat. So perhaps you're supporting an older vegan during lockdown. This gives you lots of information. We've also got our new publication, which is Vegan Baking. And as I said to you before, I'm not a particularly great baker. My mum says to me, "You're no Mary Berry, Claire," but the recipes in here are absolutely lovely. Starting from simple recipes like banana bread, through to brownies and something a bit more special like a Victoria sponge. So please feel free to check out our vegan baking guide. The majority of our publications are free to order if you want a hard copy, but the vegan baking guide has a small charge of £2. So we also have our own Facebook page, which is Bee for Life. So the chef team based in England were at VegFest at the weekend, so you'll find the links to their demos. We also have a range of demonstrations ranging from simple cakes through to something a bit more challenging like making your own vegan cheese. So if you're interested in vegan baking, my colleague Alex, he shows you how to make the chocolate cake from the vegan baking guide. So our chocolate's starting to melt away nicely now, we'll just keep that moving about. So the ingredients for the actual flapjacks is rolled oats, so I'm just using cheap and cheerful supermarket owned brand. Most supermarkets will do a budget brand of oats, you don't really need to spend a lot of money on expensive branded oats. I've got some maple syrup. Standard brands of pure maple syrup is actually quite expensive, so most supermarkets do a maple blend that is less than half the price, so I would recommend just using that for this recipe. So as I said, it's a peanut butter flapjack, so I've got some smooth peanut butter, again just supermarket owned brand. If you prefer the crunchy peanut butter, that would work absolutely fine too. And then finally I've got some coconut oil. So the coconut oil that I've got from the local Tesco's is organic. There's absolutely no need to buy organic. It's just that for some reason the Tesco organic one is actually much cheaper than the other branded products. So we're going to use coconut oil. So coconut oil, you'll find that beside most products like olive oil and rapeseed oil. So my soup's starting to bubble away nicely. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir just to make sure that pasta's not sticking. So my chocolate's melting down nicely. So as I said, you can use any chocolate that you like. If you fancied adding some inclusions to your flapjacks, you could add some chopped nuts as well. You could also add some dried fruit like raisins or sultanas, that would be nice. So that's melted down nicely. So I'm just going to take that off the heat now and then let that just melt away just in the residual heat in the pan. So take another pan. So what I found with this recipe, the instruction says is to melt the peanut butter first, but what I've found is that the peanut butter can burn quite easily. So what I like to do is to put in the coconut oil first. So we need a couple of spoonfuls of our coconut oil. Oh, not much. We can add that in. Get that melting down. Just want to grab another spoon. So once your coconut oil starts to melt, it will melt quite quickly. We can go ahead and add our maple syrup. And once that's beginning to melt, we can then add our lovely peanut butter. So I'm just going to turn the heat down on my soup now just to bring it to a gentle simmer. So as your peanut butter and your coconut oil and maple syrup start to blend together, it gives you a nice thick sauce. So you can see we've got this lovely luscious liquid, and then I can go ahead and just tip my oats in. So if you were using any extra inclusions like sultanas or raisins, it would be at this point that you would add them. So we're simply just combining that together, so I'll turn that heat off now. And we just want to mix this just for a moment or so, just to let all those lovely oats develop all those nice flavours that we've added. So if you wanted to spice this up, you could add something like cinnamon or mixed spice. That would work really well too. Dried cranberries or dried apricots would be absolutely delicious in this too. So I'm going to take my lined tin, so they make sure that you grease it and line it first. And then I'll go ahead and pour in our lovely oaty mixture. So then I'm just going to use the back of my spoon just to press that out to the edges. So I say you can use a round tin or a square one or a rectangle one, but do make sure that you grease and line it first. So we'll just spread that right up to the edges. Lovely. So I'm just going to take my chocolate off the boiler now. So when you lift this up, take care because steam will come out and your bowl will be hot. So just take care there. So you can see all that chocolate has melted. Absolutely lovely. So if you are doing the vegan version, just double check your label on your chocolate just to make sure that it is dairy free. So go ahead and pour over that lovely dark chocolate. So as I said, this is a no-bake flapjack. You want to place this in the fridge until it's hard. I generally do these overnight. And then you can cut them into your desired squares or triangles. So I'm just gently spreading that chocolate over to the edges. So just be quite gentle here so that you don't lift up the oaty base. Just let that spread out right up to the edges. So I said, if you prefer, if you don't want as much chocolate, you can just drizzle it over, and then we'll place that in the fridge overnight. So come back to my orzo. So if you were doing this at home, let it cook for about 10 minutes so that you're going to get your pasta to be nice and al dente. Just turn that heat down a little bit. So I'm going to add some spinach. I'm using baby spinach. If you prefer, you could use cabbage or kale. That would work equally as well. So if you are using a bag of spinach, make sure you've got one that's been pre-washed, or if it hasn't been pre-washed, wash it before you use it. And we'll go ahead and add our spinach. This will cook down quite quickly. And we'll let that wilt down. So as I say, I'm doing the soup version today. This will thicken up in the fridge overnight. The pasta will swell up. But if you're doing the stew, just reduce that stock level by half. So our spinach is wilting down nicely. Add more there. Then we'll just place the lid on that just to let that finish off. So to finish off this dish, I'm going to top my stew with a little bit of green pesto. So pesto is a blend of basil. It's really fragrant, typical taste of Italy. So it's made with basil and pine nuts. So you could make this yourself. You would just blend up some fresh basil. So perhaps you've grown basil as part of your Grow Together project. Lots of fresh basil with some olive oil seasoning and some pine nuts. So if you couldn't get pine nuts, cashew nuts would work well with this, or even walnuts would be nice too. So we're going to use this just as a seasoning, just to stir through at the end here. So I'm just going to go ahead and serve up my lovely soup. So our pasta's absorbed all those lovely flavours and it's started to swell up. And then I'm just going to finish that off just with a little spoonful of pesto. So just stir that pesto through just to finish off, and it gives you that nice rich Italian flavour. So there we have my Orzo bean soup. And finally, here is my flapjack. So these are ones that I made last night. I made these ones in a rectangular tray. So you can see there that I've broke one in half, so it's got that nice thick layer of chocolate. So thank you so much for joining me today for today's short session. So you can see you can make a really nice nutritious meal in virtually 20 minutes. It's a really lovely recipe, the Orzo stew. So I hope you do try it, and if you do try it out, please let me know how you got on. So I'll see you next week, guys. Bye now.